Hi, this is Marlene and a warm welcome from Glasgow, Scotland to all around the world. In this series of Marlene and Friends, I'll be sharing with you the most amazing group of people who have all the skills and expertise to make our world one of health and peace for all who live here, humans and non-humans alike. This week on my series is my good friend and colleague Verne Varona, who is a native New Yorker living in Manhattan and currently working on several multimedia projects. Hugely exciting. Verne has become known as one of the most captivating and dynamic health educators in the country. For 40 years, his lectures, workshops and media appearances have motivated literally thousands of people to take better and more conscious care of their health. Verne is a renowned keynote speaker throughout the US, Canada and Europe, with a captivating style that uses humour, insight and practical science to improve and enrich the lives of so many. He studied traditional Chinese medicine and nutrition at the East-West Foundation of Boston in the 70s. Verne's first book, the hugely successful Nature's Cancer Fighting Foods, is currently in a 16th printing. It's incredible. Verne's second book, Macrobiotics for Dummies, is part of the internationally popular Dummies series and is a comprehensive work embracing a flexible, multicultural health perspective on body, mind and spirit. Hi, I'm Marlene Watson-Tara in Service for a Healthy World. My guest today is my fabulous New York buddy, Verne Varona. He is one of the most captivating and dynamic health educators I have the pleasure of knowing. For over 40 years, Verne's lectures, workshops, media appearances have motivated literally thousands of people to take better and more conscious care of their health. Verne is the author of Nature's Cancer Fighting Foods and Macrobiotics for Dummies, both of which are huge international bestsellers. As if that wasn't enough, his talents even extend to being a gifted artist, an incredible photographer, and a wonderful entertainer. What a mix. Maybe that's why Verne's classes on education and nutrition are notoriously entertaining. Welcome, Sir V, as I call you, and congratulations on all your upcoming projects.
I'm going to hire you as my press agent. Thank you very much. Well said, thank you.
Well, you know, a book about breakfasts, when I read what you were up to, I thought, seriously? And then I thought, oh my God, no, I so agree, Verne. It's the most important meal of the day and my absolute favourite. You know, we have a feast every morning. So let's talk about what you're going to do with this book.
Well, it's a new proposal, and they're looking at it right now, and I'm excited about it. But it's a book. It's like the Breakfast Bible, although I'm not calling it that. It's about healthy, whole, and hearty breakfast, and why we have so much problem with that meal. And everybody has a different idea of what they want to eat for breakfast, and that's often predicated on their personal condition, their health condition. It might be because, like I love sometimes people say, I don't do breakfast in the morning. That tells me this person eats late at night or eats in bed. Isn't that disgusting?
Eat in bed, yuck.
So, I say eat in bed on the vacation. It doesn't sound like a vacation to me. It sounds like digestion and gas. But anyway, if you eat late at night or if you eat a large meal, the next day in the morning you don't feel like eating. And that can upset your entire blood sugar management. And in some people who are not as sensitive, it can still upset it in that it creates different cravings for them that make the food that they're eating less satisfying. So the two issues I really have are people not knowing what to eat for breakfast or the variety of meals to choose. It doesn't have to mean that you have to eat a miso soup for breakfast and oatmeal. There are lots of different varieties of breakfast, but it has to be based on how to personalize your diet. So the book on breakfast will be more of a personalized diet, which shows different categories. You might feel like having this. If you feel like having a light breakfast, these are the healthiest choices you can make.
Great.
And you can gauge it and you can feel what works best for you. Because ultimately, what works best is what your own experience dictates.
Yeah.
And that's what creates conviction in us, that, this works for me. So that's the idea.
That's fantastic,
the other idea springing off of that was, not everybody's digesting their food. And you always hear people saying, you are what you eat. But the truth is, you're not what you eat. You are what you can digest from what you eat.
Exactly.
So that's the second book. And the book I'm working on right now is about absorption and what are the principles of digestion beyond. I mean, if you say absorption to any nutritional speaker, and most nutritionists, if you say absorption, they're always thinking, oh yeah, well you need probiotics and you need enzymes, and it's all there's not a lot of evidence about that. There's a lot of controversy about whether or not we really can effectively use that stuff. And I know from recommending them to people in the past that some people have not benefited from it. So what are the food sources of creating gut bacteria? And one of the major sources is fermentation, which we've lost as a concept. So it's coming back, and you can tell with the kombucha craze and with people eating miso and sauerkraut and foods like that, there are a real need for people to understand how to use fermentation. And one of my favorite books is a book about fermentation around the world. And it's interesting to hear how different tribes and cultures have used fermented foods in different ways to have a little portion with their diet.
I know. I mean, it's unbelievable. When I was interviewing Mayumi, who I know you know well too, Madonna's chef and fantastic Macrobiotic chef, we were talking about the culture of Japan and how it's lost its amazing ability to understand the fermentation that they use there. Even simple things like miso soup or having a little bit of pickles in the morning. And she has a program that she teaches called Intestinal Gardening. It's beautiful. And I have a program I teach called your Gut Maintenance Program. And now you're doing this book on absorption. So it's wonderful because, just as you say, Verne, that's where we get our health. We get our health from the gut, Amazing.
Our old mutual friend Lino, he always talks about the bowel movement as being your guru.
Yeah.
Because it tells you information about your absorption, and it does. Mm-hmm. So understanding bowel diagnosis is really important too.
Yeah.
So that's another area that we can get into. So yeah, it's all relevant and it's important, and you don't see a lot of people talking practically about that stuff in a way that can inspire you to know for yourself.
Sure.
And self-advocacy is really what we're talking about. And for that, we usually ask physicians what's going on with us, as opposed to figuring out. Matter of fact, I open up some of the medical conferences I do when I talk about advocacy with this joke. I'll tell you real quickly. This guy goes to the physician and he says, every time I touch here, doctor, this really hurts me. What do you think it is? And the doctor says, well, is that it? He says, no, I touch here, it hurts me. And if I touch right on the back, right in the kidney, oh man, it just kills me. What do you think it is, doctor? And the doctor says, well, Harry, let's do this blood workup and x-ray and come back tomorrow and we'll figure out what it is, okay? And the doctor says, oh, was that sound good? Yeah, okay, I'm in pain. Don't worry. Comes back the next day and the doctor says, Harry, sit down. You have a broken finger, Harry. And it's silly, but it's true. We don't examine. We don't know how to self-examine. And that's really what we're talking about.
No, that's fantastic. And the other thing that I'm excited to hear that you're doing as well is you're going to be writing a book on cravings. When I was creating my online Weight Loss Nature's Way course, I wrote an ebook on cravings it was mostly about dopamine and stuff. But I know you're bringing, fantastic information here because you had a huge experience with cravings, hilariously, when you were about 18, having had too much salt. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, at the time, I was actually in college. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't an ordinary college. It was a college where people wore funny hats and big shoes. It was the American Circus Ringling Brothers, and they had a clown college, and I was one of their students. And I went on to clowning for a little while. I was just sort of a Charlie Chaplin imitator. But in those days, during the 3 months of college, of this particular college we went to, I was just started changing my diet. And it just started sort of a really strict macrobiotic diet. I was reading the book and I was doing it just as the book says. And I was eating nothing but grain. I mean, the book said, eat grain for 10 days so you could have an experience so you could see the relevance of having grain in your diet. Perfect bowel movement, more energy, better sleep. And it was true. Everything checked out. But I felt so good, I thought, I'm just going to keep on eating just grain. So everybody at school was plotting to get me to eat something different. And one day somebody stuck a banana. I was joking. Somebody came over and stuck a banana in my nose, and I just went nuts when I smelled that sweet. And I jumped on a bicycle, and I ran to the store, and I was like... And I got to the store, and I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted these Chips Ahoy cookies that came in 3 columns. And in that aisle, I was so ravenous. I ripped the bag open. And I took a whole column, and I took some milk, and I went back out, because I was so tight. I was eating so much salt, and I was salt can create constriction. And I was feeling kind of tight. I was getting more and more rigid in my movement. And by the way, I was sitting out there on the curb because I didn't care where I was sitting. I just wanted to finish those cookies. And I started eating the cookies and drinking the milk, and I got the stomach ache. And I sort of lay down on the street, my legs in the street, and half on the curb. And I passed out. for a couple of minutes, and the other guys who come after me, they said, man, you were like lying there. It was like a crime scene. There were chocolate chip cookies all around and milk, and you were all saturated in milk. So it was a terrible experience.
Yeah, I bet.
I went on this salt, sugar. So to relate it to what you're saying, there are some physiological reasons for cravings that you don't hear about. And it's way beyond just nutritional reasons, like, oh, I want chocolate for theobromine. No, it's not about chemicals in food in most cases. It's about ordinary things that you do, like the amount of animal protein you eat or the amount of salt you take, both because there's salt in animal tissue, will predispose you to crave sweet. So the more of that you eat, the more. So when I'm dealing with people who need to reduce their sweet, I get them off animal protein. I say, no, you have to stay away for a little while. And you'll see that it'll be much easier to manage those cravings for sweet. The other thing is semi-fasting, which people do all the time. They have a big lunch, and they wait 5, 6, 7, 8 hours before eating again. And then after dinner, they have to have something sweet. If you have to have something sweet after dinner, it's usually an indicator of blood sugar balance in terms of the way you ran your day or the volume of food you're eating or what you're eating. So there are about 10 different reasons I put together for fat cravings, sugar cravings, overeating cravings. And when we understand these factors, they become flags, and we can learn where our behavior is going errant and change those and make cravings less of an effort. Because the idea is like, how busy do you want to be thinking about food all the time?
I know.
So that's the idea. So we create more independence.
Fantastic. Well, we can never have enough information on cravings. Verne, I know you've just completed a chapter on general nutrition for a well-known oncologist in the States. Congratulations on that. And he deals mostly with prostate cancer. So he's been involved working with many of the doctors in the States who are contributing different chapters, and you were the only MD that contributed a chapter to this book. So I'm really proud of you for doing that. Well done you, because I was working.
I'm not an MD, but I'm the only non-MD.
I know, that's what I'm saying, you're the only non-MD, but it's fantastic to see all this coming together, natural health care, and I was working with my brother with prostate cancer. I know you know the story with that, and the huge success of bringing his PSA down from 580 to 0.6. So that's wonderful to see that combination happening.
Thank you. The physician is Mark Schultz. He's a prostate oncologist from Los Angeles, and he's head of the Prostate Cancer Research Institute. And they've had me lecture several years for their medical conferences, and he asked me to participate in this book. So I wrote a chapter about food principles in general, really thinking about the average individual who's trying to approach it nutritionally, and that's the problem. There's so much information out there. We get very nutritionally oriented. I was in a health food store the other day, and I was by the vitamin counter, and there was this guy asking the attendant, he said, what do I do for bronchitis? And the guy said, oh, you need to take this, and you need to take this, he'd got like 7 or 8 supplements there. And I said, wait a second, I know them. So I said, hold on, what is it that you're eating lately? I just want to find out, if you're going 3 steps forward with your supplements, you're going 8 steps backwards with your diet. So better to get all coordinated. He said, oh, so I have to change my diet? I said, yeah. He said, well, I'm eating really well.
Well, they all say that.
All
the time. Bill and I eat it every day.
Well, because you're thinking quality. I'm eating good quality. Okay. But you know what? I once had a client who had pancreatitis. So the pancreas is inflamed. And his blood sugar was really mismanaged. And I was explaining how that influences the condition adversely. And he was a well-known actor, and he's well known to smoke a lot of marijuana. So I said, it might mean that you have to stop smoking marijuana. And he leaned over and he said, you don't understand how much I spend on my marijuana. And I said, and he had just built a house, so I knew he was in construction as well. So I just said, if I told you I like you very much, and I'm going to hit you over the head with a 2x4, but I'm not going to use cheap pine. I'm going to use a really good hardwood. Would that be a consolation? And he said, no, that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard of. I said, well, that's the quality issue. Quality is important, but it's secondary. Secondary to what? Secondary to the way you eat, the concentration of nutrient, fat percentages, carbohydrate percentages, sodium content, no sodium, too much sodium, having some sodium. So all these factors are much more important than primary. And we don't get that. We just hear about nutrients all the time. And looking at nutrient, it's reductionistic. You get the small view, and you miss the large view. So it's important, but it's not primary.
Well, I mean, we've become nutritional junkies all over the world, right? Everybody thinks they have to be a biochemist and have a degree in nutritional science to go and put dinner on the table. You know, I mean, what's in 50 years, in the last 50 years in particular, it's just completely gone through the roof. And the more information that comes out, the more complicated it becomes. And basically, if you look back to the principles of, you know, what do we need to be healthy? Whole grains, beans, pulses, vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds. That's why I love macrobiotics. It's such a simple, beautiful way of living. Plus, the philosophy is so heartwarming.
So what you're really talking about, let me just correct you from my viewpoint and my teaching, is macrobiotic principles.
Mm-hmm.
Those are principles that can move into any culture.
Yep.
And if you really look at traditional cultures, you can see that almost every culture in the world that hadn't developed agriculture ate the same way.
Yep.
They ate three primary foods. They ate grain, bean, and vegetable.
Right.
Now, it's different proportions. And that's probably where macrobiotics failed in the early 70s by talking about a specific percentage that you should have. And what we realized eventually 10, 20, 30 years later finally is that, well, maybe those percentages are not across the board for everybody.
Yeah.
So maybe we need a little less grain. Maybe we need more vegetables. But the idea is those thirds of the diet, grain, bean, and vegetable, I put in quarters. So I recommend a quarter grain, a quarter vegetables, a quarter beans, and I leave a quarter there for everything else that you're eating that you can reduce or add or get better quality of.
Yeah.
But those are the three primary things people need to change and center their diet around. And, you know, we have history and we have the evidence of science from Dr. Burkitt in the 60s to all the people today speaking about this, like Dr. Bernard and Dr. Jensen and Dr. McDougall and Colin Campbell, PhD from Columbia? Cornell. So many of these physicians are all coming, and researchers, to the same place. And that's where I think some of the macrobiotic principles can really help solidify this into a more personalized way of eating as opposed to a template that people have to originally stick by.
I mean, the Macrobiotics for Dummies, you know, that we have our students read, you know, when they come on our 2-week Macrobiotic health coaching course, Verne, it's such an incredible book of reference, and the way you highlight that and put in different foods, even swing foods and, you know, staples, it's very, very clever. And I mean, you know, I know it's been a hugely successful book. So that's wonderful. Anybody that's listening in that haven't explored macrobiotics, apart from my own book, of course, forgive the self-promotion on your interview. Macrobiotics for Dummies is a brilliant source of reference.
I was excited to write the Dummies book. My first agent first told me about it. I said, I'm not going to write a book called Dummies, you know, the Dummies series, because I'd seen the Dummies series, but I started researching it and I realized they've produced over 200 million books. And they were very comprehensive. And I had an editor that beat me up every day, fortunately. He was wonderful. And he'd say, no, you can't say that. No, here's a better way to try and say it. And I'd read it and think, damn it, he's right. So it's a 400-page book. It's very comprehensive. And I tried to emphasize the principles. So we understand there's not a diet aspect, but there are principles that we add to the way we nurture ourselves dietarily. And I've got great feedback on it.
And you have a very beautiful, easy to understand explanation on the whole concept of carbohydrate and glucose and how it works in the body and the difference between complex and refined, and even down to sugars like, you know, rice malt syrups and barley malt syrups. Although they're complex, they're sort of refined complex, but, you know, you just put the whole thing into really easy to understand education. It's fantastic, so thank you for that. Now, you know, you're working on some YouTube videos. When will we be able to view you on film?
I'm hoping to have those done in May. May is our tentative shooting time for that. I'm just coming out of a couple of year hiatus where I sort of immersed myself in research and wrote as much as I could. And now finally I'm ready to produce and release some of those products. So I'm looking forward to doing that and doing more media and just really being out there in a little bigger way. So I enjoy it, and I feel more confident about what I'm doing because I'm seeing more results from people, and I've learned to take that advice and unify it so that it becomes more individual for people. And it's hard to personalize an approach, but that's the only way you can successfully get somebody inspired to be inspired.
No, I would agree. And, you know, it's the same at this end as well. And hopefully we're going to be working sometime together soon, Verne, because, you know, Bill and I, you know, we've got some great projects in the pipeline, you know, from prisons to creating educational courses for a vegan school in Mallorca and all sorts of different things. The one thing that I do feel that we have the edge over every other expert out there is diagnosis. I mean, for me, it's just fantastic, and I know that's a big part of what you teach. Share.
Well,
Share.
I'm glad you asked about that. The reason why is because it always appealed to me when I saw James Bond movies. I remember, I'll never forget, I once saw a James Bond movie where he took a hair out of his head and he licked it and he put it between two doors. So later he would come and see if the door was broken open by his hair. That form of diagnosis, even reading Sherlock Holmes, has always been fascinating for me. So when I first learned about Chinese diagnosis from Michio Kushi and how it applied to Oriental, what they were calling Oriental medicine, that was a fascinating area for me. And I delved into it. I studied, I even read Bill's book, and I read everybody had written stuff on it. And the more I studied, and the more I saw clients, the more I realized that some of it didn't really pan out. And I started studying other kinds of diagnosis. I studied Tibetan urine diagnosis. And that's, boy, you haven't lived until you study urine diagnosis. That's a whole other area. Looking at the bubbles and the colors. But there are many kinds of traditional diagnostics. And I studied Western diagnostics too. And it's really fascinating to see that actually a lot of them do have a meeting point.
Yeah, they do actually.
In terms of facial color, in terms of swelling, where you get edemic, where you don't. The problem with so-called macrobiotic diagnosis is that it's very energetically oriented, which means it's very theoretical. And while that's relative to some degree, to a large degree, in talking to scientists, it's not. So you have to find a meeting point that you can explain some of this stuff. But it's pretty fascinating. I was, just a really funny story. At least it was funny when it happened. I had a client from Croatia, and he was excited. He had come to me. He says, "I heard you can talk. Look at me and tell me what's going on." I said, "Yeah. Well, I'll do my best. I'll give you an idea. It's only theory, but he said, oh, it's okay. You can do it. You did for my brother. You can do for me." So he came to the house, and we did this. It was like in the late 70s, and we did the session. And he's sitting there like excited. He says, "Oh, you look, you see." So I'm looking at him. He's like broken down his forehead. So I'm looking at his forehead, and he goes, "Oh, I must tell you something. I have herpes." And I said, "Oh," I said, "Well, listen, is it bothering you right now?" He says, "No, it feels good." I said, "It feels good." He said, "Yeah, it feels good. I love it. It makes me feel like a man." I said, "Really?" He's like, "Oh." And I thought, this guy's messed up, you know. I said, "Are you in pain?" He said, "No pain, I'm strong." I said, "Oh, how long have you had it?" He said, "Every year I get it." And finally, we were probably talking about two different things. And he was saying, "I have a hairpiece. I have a hairpiece." I'm like, so we went 20 minutes on that until I realized he was talking about his hairpiece. So spooners and school meetings always screw me up. So I'm always very careful when I'm talking with clients about their stuff. We were doing an interview, a man on the street, a person on the street interview, and this lady came up, and I was trying to gauge people's understanding of the body. You know, so one of the things I said also about nutrition, I asked two questions. One was, do you know where the alimentary canal is? Now, most of us know the alimentary canal is a food pipe, you know. So I went up to people very technically. I said, "Could you tell us, we're doing a little survey here, where is the alimentary canal?" And I gave the mic, and they would say, some guy said, "Well, it's in Texas, but you know Corpus Christi, like that, can't help." And somebody said,
"Oh dear,
Singapore. I think Singapore. Yeah, I think Singapore. You know, so and then we show a little thing on the screen where you see the elementary canal."
Oh, that's fantastic. No, diagnosis is great fun. I know when we're teaching it on our courses, when the students come and study and Bill, you know, he's working with them individually, you know, they're learning from each other and reading each other's eyes and tongues and faces, and it's funny, it's really funny, you know. So then they're going home and they're watching everybody on the television that night as a bit of homework, you know, the newscaster, he was having too much salt, or his prostate was too much, or so no, it's fabulous. But I know what you're saying, you know, there is an element where it does meet the West. So
and that's helpful to create a little more legitimacy. It's helpful to know what they say, you know, like in Chinese medicine they say a bluish sclera, the white of the eye, shows a tendency towards being more yin or more acid based. But in Western medicine they say a blue sclera indicates anemia. which is the same thing.
That's right.
So, when you understand that both aspects of it, it gives a little more legitimacy to your teaching.
Of course.
And that can help people, because the more insight you have into your sense, your condition, and how you react to things, the more inspired you feel. So I encourage people to learn this information.
Yeah, and Bill's book that you mentioned, actually, Your Face Never Lies, it's one of the most sought after books in the world. It's fantastic. Yeah, I think in the 70s.
Simple, clear book. I like it.
Yeah. So, where's your next travel adventure? Are you in the UK soon, so we can get together, or I have to come back to New York and see you?
Come back to New York. I'm staying in New York. I'm writing. I really have a lot of pressure here to produce and create. So I'm working on 2 proposals and working on some film stuff. I'm also producing a film right now for a very popular nutritional advocate. And he's got a film company, and we're doing a film on vegan docs. So it's vegan physicians. It's been really interesting interviewing vegan physicians and talking to them about what their therapy is and how it influenced their own life and how it influences their clients and their case history.
Well, Michael Clapper, my lovely vegan doc, you've probably interviewed him, yeah? He gives the best explanation of B12 on the planet. He's wonderful. He's going to be doing that on my series. Yeah, he's fantastic.
I'll look for that. I like him. He's really sharp. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it's about 12 years since you and I have been together, Mr. Varona.
Yeah, it's been nice to see you again.
Yeah, so we have to get something organised. Maybe in May, when Bill's back out in New York, if I'm not teaching, I'll try and get back over, because I'm not on the curriculum with him. Is there anything else you want to share with us, with your lovely self, with the world, before you go?
I'm looking at some notes I took here, and I think, you're good. I love that you're doing this project. I think it's really important to reach people. And, there's so much fear and trepidation around food, and the whole idea that we're talking about is change, and that itself is really threatening. But the bottom line is, when you are willing to change, you can see for yourself tremendous benefit. And the only way that you can initiate that is by actually taking one step, one foot over the other, and really challenging yourself. And really, ultimately, what we're talking about is self-challenge.
That's right.
How willing are you to really self-challenge, to really get behind looking at your stuff and saying, I need to exercise more. I need to be a little more disciplined. I don't think I feel like going to the gym. No, you go to the gym. You can think about it later. But, being that kind of motivator behind yourself, I think that's really critical. And it trickles into your food. It trickles into your expression, challenging yourself to express more. And really what we're learning, if anything else lately, is the paradigm of body, mind, and spirit is really critical to healing. Yeah. For years, most of us thought it was just about food. But when we realized, when a lot of people who were into food started getting sick, we started thinking, there's some other aspects here that are equally, for some people, if not more.
You could eat the best nutrition in the world, but lie on the couch every day, You could lie on the couch every day, or for me, it's the whole package. And when you start with for me, the food feeds your blood. The strong blood gives you the motivation, the excitement to jump out of bed every morning, having a passion or a vision or whatever it might be, whatever excites you, For me, it's for the animals. Yeah, for the animals. Much as I love the human.
That visual jumping out of bed always makes me laugh.
Yeah, it does. Ask Bill Tara. He wakens up in the morning, and I waken up in the morning and I start talking. I've always got something to say, I'm a real morning person. I've always got huge amounts of energy every day, so I'm very grateful for that. And this series I'm putting together, Verne, is going to go somewhere big. Mayumi is with Madonna in 10 days' time in Japan. And she's asking Madonna on my behalf for the series, for the television show, to write a song called Change is Coming. And we're all going to be in the chorus. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so if we don't keep putting it out there, it's never going to happen. We have to give these things life. We have to give our thoughts life. And when we give them life, that's when they happen. I want to say I love you very much. I love your work. You're a bundle of joy to be with. You make studying so much fun. And Bill and I look forward very much to working with you soon. So thank you so much, Verne.
I so appreciate being asked. Thanks. I think you're inspiring. You're a live wire, and you're so authentic, and that to me is always the key.
Thank you.
So I really appreciate you.
Right. Thanks a lot, Verne. Bye.
Bye.